France today. You've got that big election coming up, Le Pen versus Macron. As you know, President Barack Obama came out last week with the big endorsement from Macron. He was already up by 20 points, so
right.
not really breaking news.
Well, but President Obama hasn't had a very good recent track record electorally, and he really dismissed Brexit, which of course was a huge success. He went all in for Hillary Clinton. I think in those waning days of the campaign, we're so convinced she was going to win that his message wasn't really elect her so much as preserve my legacy and isn't this fun to make fun of the other opponent. You know, the election was 6 months ago tomorrow, and whereas people were wondering, will Donald Trump accept the election results, it turns out that the hard left can't and Hillary Clinton can't. And I think they're missing what's going on all across Europe, which is, and the world, frankly, where people are just telling the establishment, stop telling me who to be, what to think, how to worship, how to raise my children, where my hard-earned money should go. People are really asking for sovereignty and security and accountability. And
identity,
frankly, prosperity, right? And identity. And you see that even in places that aren't having elections, you see a resistance among many rank-and-file citizens saying just stop with the lack of sovereignty, the open borders, stop, you know, trying to be a collective nation with other nations, and let us at least have self-governance.
You're also seeing this resistance from the left and in the mainstream media to the repeal and replacement of Obamacare, and President Trump tweeting this week saying the fake media is working to make health care, the vote, look bad. He took to Twitter the other day and in a series of tweets, and he's, you know, there's a lot of folks on the left saying that this bill is now going to kill people. And that's what the left is saying. You're hearing that at these town halls. You're seeing that in the mainstream media. What's the response from the White House? It's a hard message to be up against. To play defense against that kind of messaging, what's the plan?
It's such an outrageous and untrue quote message, as you put it. Look, it's easier to jeer from the cheap seats than come up with a message of your own and be honest about the facts. How did we get here? Why have so many Americans asked for Obamacare to be repealed and replaced? It's because the premiums have increased by 40% on average, 100% in some places. You have Iowa, a state that Donald Trump won for just the second time as a Republican since 1984, and he won it by 9 points, in part because look what just happened. People know health care there has not been going well. Just this week, we know 94 of the 99 counties in Iowa will have one provider. That's not choice. That's not competition. That example is going on everywhere. And you know, saying people are going to die, and the enablers in the mainstream media not calling out those breathless, heartless predictions and going right to the prognostication for 2018. Why in the world are we talking about who's going to win or lose in 2018 when the duty of the mainstream media, of news reporters, is to tell you it's actually in the bill, not to allow others to scare? But look, the Democrats, I mean, they've got nothing. We don't know who the leader of the party is. They have no message. And this whole stop, no resistance, that's not a message. That's not going to resonate with the forgotten man and forgotten woman that came to the polls for Trump and Pence 6 months ago and very much believes in the 533,000 jobs that have been created, the 211,000 jobs just in the last month, the 4.4% unemployment rate, the big step toward repealing and replacing what many Americans see as draconian, invasive, intrusive, expensive, expansive, federally government-run health care. Look what he did this week with the religious liberty executive order. He got a spending bill passed. He's had 14 or so bilateral meetings. He announced his first foreign trip, Saudi Arabia into the Muslim world, Israel, Rome to see and to go to the Vatican to meet the Pope, and of course the previous commitments to the G7 in Italy and NATO and Brussels. I mean, this is a man of great impact, and you've got the other side saying, stop, with no message.
Well, you get the other side also being amplified by a so-called mainstream media that long ago stopped reporting facts and became the opposition party.
It's really unfortunate. It's
really
not their job to tell us their opinion or even to prognosticate about elections that are a year and a half from now.
They do it no matter what.
These are the same people who got it wrong 6 short months ago. And none of them lost their jobs. They're still around, and they're telling us what's going to happen. They do it with a straight face. What's going to happen a year and a half from now? They still can't get over what happened 6 months ago with Hillary Clinton leading the charge. And as for Hillary, look, people are saying, rolling their eyes and belly aching. Most of them are Democrats, by the way. Why won't she just going away? I'm kind of getting comfortable and used to it. If she wants to keep herself out on the national scene, more power to her, because it reminds everybody that the left just can't move on, that they've got no bench. Where are the leaders of the party? Who are the centrist Democrats? They're going to reach out to the same voters that Donald Trump was able to animate and motivate to the polls.
Well, speaking of centrists, there are a number of centrist Republicans that are in the Senate, and that's where the health care bill will go next. President Trump, as you've been saying, has been working a lot behind the scenes with the House to get this passed. What is he going to do with the Senate? Because he's working with sort of a different dynamic. He's going to have to bring everyone to the table to get this passed.
President Trump and Leader McConnell have a very good relationship, very good regularly working relationship. They speak often, and you saw on full display when they worked together to confirm Neil Gorsuch. That was just a masterful example of their ability to come together and do what the president does and what the Senate does. The Senate has said they need time, and they need to look at the House bill. They need to figure out how to move forward, and they should be given that time, because when you rush something through, it doesn't go well. This is far too complicated.
We saw that with Obamacare.
What is the president worried about, though? A watered-down version being sent back to the House?
He's not worried about anything, because he knows that Obamacare will not be the law of the land. He knows that those people who have said, I fell through the cracks. I don't have employer-sponsored health insurance like most of us do in this country. I don't have government benefits like TRICARE, VA, Medicare, Medicaid. I'm one of the millions who did not benefit from Obamacare. I'm a farmer, I'm a plumber, I'm a hairdresser. I don't have a way to pool myself with others. He knows that the health savings accounts is a very popular feature of his plan. He's very forcefully talked about the ability to buy health insurance across state lines, how to get Medicaid dollars more in line with what individual states need and their governors knowing what they need. So we know that Obamacare, the disaster that it's been for many Americans who are left behind, and we know the fact that people had this card they couldn't use. It was the worst possible outcome for so many Americans, where they had health insurance, but they had no care or coverage because they simply couldn't afford the premiums.
Or they couldn't get similar to what you would get in a preview of a single payer for the VA, potentially. The president gets a lot of credit, has gotten a lot of credit, even in the mainstream press, for reaching out, for being active in the final hours of that vote to get Republicans on board, to get to that 216. Do you anticipate the same approach with the Senate? You're going to have to get a Mike Lee to agree with a moderate. Ted Cruz says we got to get it done. You feel like the same approach, rolling his sleeves up and being active on the Hill, will help push it across?
The president was incredibly patient and vigilant in working the phones, hosting personal meetings. He and the vice president inviting House members to the White House who wanted to talk about what might get them to yes or what their concerns were with the bill. He's incredibly engaged. This is what professional deal makers and business leaders do. They can't just study something or have a commission or wait for the next Congress or the next election. They need results, tangible results and delivery immediately. And I think Washington has not seen this almost ever, if not in modern history. Somebody who comes in and says, how do we get to yes? Is it possible? How do we get a better deal? And I would just repeat what Leader McCarthy said out in the Rose Garden on Thursday, when he said, when President Trump first called him about health care, he said, Kevin, don't give me a bill that's good for the Republican Party. Give me a health care bill that's good for the American people and the folks who need coverage. And
so what are the biggest sticking points right now for you? I mean, what in this bill, what's going to be the hardest part of this bill getting it through?
Well, there are several things that the Senate will take up, and I'm not going to get ahead of the Senate and actually enumerate them. But there are several things that the Senate is already working on. It was publicly reported that the Senate was already working on pieces of a bill before the House even passed theirs, with the anticipation that they would. But the president bringing together this very diverse party that he now governs and showing that the House, the Senate, the White House, the governors, the state legislatures, all of which are very Republican, in part because of Obamacare, the biggest issues that helped the Republicans in 2010, 14, and 16. The president brought a party together where you've got 23, I think, Republicans who govern in districts that Hillary Clinton won. You've got Democrats who didn't vote yes, who govern in districts that Donald Trump won. Nobody's talking about them losing their seats, are they?
Right.
Why didn't you vote according to the conscience and the will of your constituents in at least getting a better health care reform system? So, but look, these things take time, but you're going to see, as the left just screams resist and jeers and cheers from the cheap seats, you're going to see a Republican president, House and Senate working together to get a bill that everybody agrees on.
Well, quickly speak to this resistance movement, because Hillary Clinton was out this last week, 6 months after the election. not really wanting to take any of the blame on herself, you know, saying that it goes back to James Comey, the email hacking.
Sexism, that one was rich.
Is she, though, doing a disservice to the Democratic Party to say,
Yes.
you know what, maybe I had some fault?
Yes, and the way you know that, Abby, is so many of them privately and some publicly outwardly groaning about her return and her not taking responsibility, because it hurts the party to have a message of, I was cheated, it wasn't my fault, there's sexism that stopped me. This woman who had been the First Lady, a United States Senator, Secretary of State,
blame other people.
is crying sexism. So look, I want to just review very quickly what happened on May 8th, very quickly. It wasn't a squeaker, it was a stunner. This man, Donald Trump, won states that Republicans hadn't won. He turned six states from blue to red, and she's responsible.